Hey everybody, welcome to the Games Tavern Happy Hour. I'm Mac, and today we're joined with Rob. Where man? There we
Hi,
go.
I'm Rob, and apparently I'm joined with Mac.
Yes, we are joined. Damn, I was going to do a pound it out of the side, but new cropping is not working for me. Anyway, we got a whole bunch of interesting stories coming out of the news. We're still playing around with this new format, so you guys let us know what you think about it in the comments wherever they are on your screen. And one flesh, yes. Power twin powers activate or whatever. So we're going to go ahead and open up first with some news, some interesting things that have been coming out in the RPG tabletop gaming arena that we're kind of excited about, that personally I'm excited about. And if you guys have anything out there that you're interested in, please sound off in the chat and we'll try and bring it up. But the first one is sort of a light-hearted, fun piece of news. D&D or Wizards of the Coast announced a Heroes Feast cookbook. So that should be interesting. They're billing it as having 80 recipes that are fantasy inspired and allows you to make food, drink, everything from snacking all the way up to like full main courses and desserts and cocktails to go along with. So I think that'll be a fun time. I've been trying to learn how to cook, but it's been going okay. Have you had any experience trying to follow weird recipes there, Rob?
No,
No, not at all.
to qualify this, um, I have a whole bunch of old recipes from my grandmother, who was a gourmet chef for a long, long time, and she is or was an expert on French-style roux and soups. And I have
Okay.
tried to follow some of her soup recipes and gotten very lost. Soup is hard, man.
See, that's why I go with stews, because I just throw everything into a pot and turn on the slow cooker and then come back later and there's food. So that's what the kind of my level of cooking right now. I'm working on fixing that. And yeah, soup is hard.
Soup is hard. Stew is easy.
It is. That's why I do it.
Pot, wait 5 hours, have food.
Yeah, I just had beef
It's
stew.
like
It's great.
soup is like, ooh, did you get those ingredients in the correct proportions? Because if you didn't, this is going to taste terrible.
Yeah. But that's one of the reasons I'm actually really excited about a fantasy cookbook. I have a friend who's been posting he's doing a challenge where every period, like 2 or 3 days, he's been posting a new thing from the Elder Scrolls official compendium cookbook, I think is what it's called. And the recipes, it basically looks like he's eating out of Skyrim, which is fantastic.
Okay.
And so I need to grab that one. And then I saw that this was just being talking about publishing it. It's coming out in late October, so it's going to be after Icewind Dale. But it's just, I'm always looking forward to new recipes, and this is nerdy enough to where I'll be like, yeah, I can do that. And just looking at some of the, I believe that there's 2 recipes that they have currently sort of like shown off. One of them is like an elven bread, so it's bread with a little bit of honey in it, I believe.
Yeah.
They have a picture of it, and it looks like a very boring babka.
Honestly, I can't stand any cookbook that doesn't have a pierogi recipe.
There might be a pierogies in here.
It's the king of foods.
Yeah. All right, it's just a Polish dumpling, but okay. I mean, which is nothing wrong with that. It's fantastic. I love dumplings.
Have you ever discovered anything that does not go in pierogi?
No, I haven't.
Correct.
But the other recipe that they have currently published, or up for preview, I guess, on the website that I linked in the chat, is the Mind Flare. It's a drink, which is, I'm just going to go ahead and read the recipe here because it's ridiculous. It requires a blender. 3 tablespoons of fresh ginger, quarter cup of sugar, quarter cup of lime juice. I'm sorry, half cup of lime juice. Half cup of thawed grape juice concentrate, 5 ounces of vodka, and
So
black
it's
and
highly
red seedless grapes. Yeah,
highly alcoholic ginger beer.
pretty much. Yeah, and it's all. Oh, and you also have to have crushed ice. So I think that basically it's making like a Slurpee. It's
Yeah.
it's like, okay, cool, whatever.
Anything
But
that starts with a quarter cup of sugar plus alcohol is like, oop, no, thank you.
yeah, it sounds like college.
Yeah.
But that's if that's indicative of everything that they're going to have coming out of there, I'm excited. I think it's going to be interesting. I think the cocktails are going to be a lot more off the wall, kind of wacky, because it's you can't make a healing potion or a potion of flight or anything like that in the real world. So there's going to be vaguely themed cocktails, but everything else is probably going to be interesting and based off of historical recipes, which have always been really fun to me.
Hmm.
If everybody out there in Twitch land is a nerd like I am, which I'm hoping you are, but likes likes looking at this kind of interesting interpretations of fantasy foods and all that, I'm going to go ahead and plug the Binging with Babish YouTube channel, which is how I've been learning how to cook. And because today, actually, he released a new video. It's part 1 of 2. He hit like 7 million subscribers or something. So he's celebrating by doing a Hobbit meal course. So he's doing 7 different recipes based off of things that they mention in the books and movies. So the first episode that he did is out today. I just put that in the chat there. And I actually just, oh yeah, a couple people have already watched it. I watched it right before we got on here, and I'm like, I'm going to need to throw this into the chat because this is worthwhile. But it's a fantastic little recipe guide, so check it out. I think that we've kind of beaten that cooked horse. So
Yeah.
if there's anything in there that Dwarven Wyvern Pierogi. Yeah, I need to get Babish's book. Yeah, it came out a while ago, and I've just been too lazy to grab it. But yeah, it's a whole bunch of really cool recipes there. Check it out. It's how I learned how to make my really awesome cookies. I had to mix them up a little bit, but it's a great starter.
I'm just gonna assume that's Cornish hen pierogi.
Cornish hen pierogi, just a Cornish hen wrapped in a pierogi.
Just call it Dwarven Wyvern.
Dwarven Wyvern. All right, so another piece of news that I'm personally really excited about is. There's a Kickstarter out. It was made by John Hudson Maples. John Hudson, I'm sorry, Map Tiles is a completely different thing there. The Kickstarter went off at noon today, so unfortunately you can't jump in on it. But at the end of the year, they're basically announced that it's going to be coming out for retail. It is something called Beowulf Age of Heroes. It's a supplement for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons with a couple twists. First up, it's focused on the Beowulf story, which, if anybody is not familiar with with Beowulf, A, we're going to talk to you later, and B, it's kind of the granddaddy of all fantasy. It's one of the foundational tomes that sort of kicks off the worlds that we love playing in. What I'm really excited about, though, is the supplement is going to be focused on one-on-one roleplay. So it's going to have it's going to be a one player, one DM kind of setup. So it's going to be a very intimate encounter and sort of building a very interesting collaborative story. I've never done any of those, and I'm really interested to see how it's going to work with the Beowulf mindset, because you build followers and sort of build your retinue as you go along. And I don't know what the plot is, if you're going to be following all the touchstones of Beowulf itself. That'd be really cool, in my opinion. But if it's not, it's still going to be really interesting to see how they play with those. But Rob, have you ever done any of the one-on-one, one-player, one GM kind of stuff? Has that ever worked out for you?
The answer to that is it really depends on the quality of the one player. So the way this often ends up working is that if you're in a group that has 2 GMs, the 2 GMs will play one-on-ones with each other. It's a way of developing your skill as a GM. You learn more about narration, and B, it gives the other GM a chance to just play the game.
Yeah.
Or play a game, and take some time off from actually thinking about having to run the game. I'm not saying that it's always going to be 2 people that run games doing one-on-ones together, because that's not true. Sometimes you're just going to do a one-on-one because that's what you need to advance the plot in your campaign.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, doing a one-on-one campaign is almost always GM on GM.
Yeah, I could see that, because there's no ensemble cast to, I don't want to say to hide in, but it's why doing a solo is a lot harder than doing, being a part of the chorus.
Yep.
It's just, you don't have anybody else to sort of, help mellow out and keep you up where you need to be. So it's a style of roleplay I've never done, and I'm really interested to see how it's going to be played out with this.
I do want to thank you, however, for actually only bringing this Kickstarter to people's attention after it's closed.
I found out about it this morning.
I'm super bad about kickstarting things. I have a rule now where I just don't kickstart any board games. I just don't. I don't anymore. But I'm really bad about role-playing game supplements.
Yeah, I'm trying to get better at checking it as I'm doing the rounds for just pulling from a million different news sources for this new programming. I'd be like, hey, I haven't checked Kickstarter. Is there anything cool there? A Beowulf thing. Well, I'm going to go ahead and buy that and then figure out what it is. Because if anybody knows me or has visited my place, you know that Beowulf is it's all over the place. It's my cat's name. But it's my favorite story and poem and probably book. I absolutely love the Beowulf mythology and try and chase
Off
it down.
screen right now, Beowulf is staring at Mac going, yeah, you keep saying my name, but nothing is going on. There's no food face.
He's asleep on my feet. So.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So I am super excited to see what they're going to be doing here. It's somewhere in, I think it was actually an interview that they did with Hodgson. He was saying that one of the things he's trying to bring in is realistic weaponry and armor and other things. There are still magic swords because they were in the poem, but the armor is going to be Dark Ages armor. The weaponry...
explaining short-bladed swords and variation thereof to people who probably don't care.
Yeah, I'm feeling like this is going to be a very niche supplement anyway. I mean, it was asking for like 8,000 pounds, and I think it closed out just shy of 40. So people are interested. It got 5 times its.
That's the thing about RPG Kickstarters is that some have a lot more interest than you would expect, and then there are others that are just like, I don't understand why that one did not get enough money.
Yeah, I've seen a lot that it looks like it's going to do really well, and then it just barely inches over the finish line. It's like, okay, it happens.
Yeah.
But I went in with I'm getting the PDF, the hard book, a Compass Rose coin. They're saying it's like an initiative tracker or a.
You're getting stuff, Mac.
Yes, I'm getting a lot of.
What they all promise. Yeah.
13th Warrior.
Before we go too far down the Kickstarter rabbit hole, I want to step forward. We'll keep ourselves moving here, and talk about Jeremy Crawford's comments.
Right. Yeah. We'll talk about Beowulf in a bit. But yeah, Jeremy Crawford. If anybody's paying attention to the tweeters, which I do, you can check us out on Twitter down below. I'm at CMac20XD6, and he's at IsRafeSafe. So check us out there. That's how I consume a portion of my news. But Jeremy Crawford came out on, I want to say Friday, could have been Thursday. And the big thing coming out of this one is saying that in future books, they're going to be ditching the... I'll just read the tweet aloud just so that make it easier there. Even though the rules of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons state that players and DMs determine alignment, the suggested alignments in our books have undeniably caused confusion. That's why future books would ditch such suggestions for player characters and reframe such things for the DM. #D&D.
Welcome back to 4th edition.
Yeah, I'm interested in this. So everyone buckle up. We're about to be complaining about alignment or arguing about it. It's gonna be great.
No. Mac and I are going to present our opinions as to why we think alignment is bad, but you can think whatever you want to about it.
Why don't you tee us up?
I have a long-standing and thorough, I wouldn't say hatred for it. I would say disappointment with alignment. It started in AD&D, and it honestly started because I hated the fact that Rangers had to be chaotic good. I hated that so much. And in AD&D, those alignments and those alignment restrictions had a purpose.
Yeah.
And it was enforcing a code of conduct for the character. It was harder to go into depth on like what constitutes a good code of conduct for a paladin, what constitutes a good code of conduct for a ranger, what constitutes a good code of conduct for a druid. It was much easier to say, when you look at the scope of actions that a character can take, a paladin is always going to lean towards the lawful good scope of action as defined by lawful and good.
Yeah.
And there were penalties for falling. If you ceased to be chaotic good as a ranger, you became a fighter. If you ceased to be lawful good as a paladin, you became a fighter.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
If you ceased to be a true neutral as a cleric, you ceased to be anything. Basically, your character got retired. And it was a big deal. And alignments were... I don't want to say they were better defined. I want to say that at your table, they were going to be better defined because your GM would give you their expectations for what does it mean when you're playing a lawful good paladin.
Yeah, because they mattered.
Yeah.
That's my big sticking point on where they are now versus where they used to be. And I'm about to be shouting get off my lawn here, but previously alignment had a meaning. It had a purpose. It had a in rules consequences and stuff for not following your alignment. Now I think that there was, and this is a huge Twitter thread. I think he put in like 20 tweets on this. One of the things he brought up is that there are no rules for changing your alignment because you can just do it, and there's no consequences for changing it. It's like, okay, well, at that point, it means nothing. It's not a useful measure of the character at that. It's just this is what the character is feeling right now. At which point, that's not an alignment system. That's a mood system.
Right.
When
And
yeah,
I just want to get back to this because I think it's important. After AD&D, third edition had restrictions only on paladins, and then you got to fourth edition where there were functionally no restrictions on any classes. But fourth edition also got rid of alignments in general.
yeah,
Like it was basically, you can have an alignment, assuming that alignment is evil. Like that was it.
yeah. It is a sticky point because I know a lot of people like them. In fact, the goblins are hacking into our thing and shouting that DM Reed likes alignment as scaffolding for roleplay. But it's not anymore. It used to be that. It used to be paladins have to be in this niche of the box because if they're not, they lose. There's problems there. Without there being reasons or methods for changing it, if it's just do what you want whenever you want, it's no longer scaffolding for anything. It's just a litmus test as to where you are. I've seen some systems that do it really interestingly, that play around with it and sort of, it's like, yeah, if you're this, you're expected to fit in here, or if you're a cleric to X god, you're supposed to follow that one's alignment. And they're pretty rigid stuff with what the alignment means. Whereas people don't operate that way. People aren't lawful good all the time. People aren't lawful evil all the time. Everyone's on a sliding scale in 3 dimensions. It's ridiculous. And trying to boil it down to a very simple, where are you on this 9-part grid? I'm glad the system looks like it's going away, or at least changing.
My absolute favorite example of this is if you have a character or a non-player character that is, for whatever reason, their alignment is set to evil, probably because they're doing bad things in general, but they are currently in the process of saving a child. What happens if you cast Detect Evil on them?
Yeah, that's
what should happen if you cast Detect Evil. Like this is one of these reasons that alignment is such a terrible tool. Because it doesn't make any sense in the context of heroic storytelling, for one. In the context of playing a game, it's not a functional tool. This comes back to, it's Chekhov's gun. Does alignment do anything? No. Then why are we talking about it?
Yeah, there's so many other things we can be focusing on.
Right.
Like I really like as a DM when I'm on this side of the screen, I like having the little lawful evil, lawful good next to all my NPCs, but that's because I'm using that as a shorthand for I know what these tropes are and I'm going to be playing to those tropes. This is what is happening here.
Which is exactly what Jeremy Crawford said is their intention for it going forward. For a DM, it can still be a tool as a shorthand for how characters are going to behave. But I prefer things like, we talked about this a couple days ago when we had this conversation the first time.
I'm hoping this is going to be the last time we have to have this conversation.
Aspects or a short list of traits. They're fundamentally the same thing, but aspects are a more narrative, permission sort of thing, and that short list of traits is what you do when you have an index card character.
Well, you were talking about a couple, what is it, Fate, you were saying, has an interesting way of talking about that?
Fate is built with those aspects in mind, and they generate narrative permission for the character. So if you have a Fate character whose high concept is, let's just say he's a traditional hero on the run from the law. That's his high concept. That gives him narrative permission to be a hero. He can anytime a heroic task comes up, he can go, hey, I want to lean on my core concept here, and he gets to spend a fate point and add whatever he wants to his role, or generate some sort of situation that's advantageous for him. It generally is a way of reinforcing playing to the archetype of the character.
Yeah, I'm for a a plug and play replacement for as the system is right now, because we need something to fill that little niche of describing how D&D 5th edition characters interact with the world on their morality. I really like the I guess traits would also kind of be the term there, but it's a quick blurb on where they, a couple of moral things that they do. It's like, always looks to do the right thing, always looks to, be good and be the hero and save people, or if they're is a religious zealot of their faith, or doesn't care about anybody but their pocketbook, or any single sentence, this is what my character is, boil down to that, and then have 3 to 5 of those. I think you're going to get a much better telling of what the character is, and they do have to be broad and vague, but you're going to get a lot more interest than just they are LE or they're CG or they're NN. It's like, yeah, actually having more fleshed out, it's going to be more personal, and it's going to sort of lean on, it's like, oh, I can play with these traits. And that's really what I'm hoping they're going to be going with on this one.
Yeah, no, I think moving it back as a tool that is specifically and only for NPCs and for the DM to interact with is a step forward, because now we don't have the players worrying about what their alignment means.
Yeah.
And I guess coming back to this, Reed brought up, that you could use a lawful good alignment to put a character in a moral dilemma, to choose between lesser of two evils and do the least harm. I just want to point out that Gary Gygax's position on what a lawful good paladin should do is kill all of the evil, even if it is still a child, Reed. That is literally what Gary Gygax said.
Well, Gary Gygax is also kind of a horrible human being. Like, he's not a great guy.
Right. I just want to point out that is original alignment guidance.
Yeah.
For lawful good characters. That is the of alignment.
Yeah. So there's a lot of interesting stuff you can play with that, but as a GM, I would much rather know those handful of small traits of, hey, these are the no negotiate zones of what builds the core of my characters, what builds their moral backbone. Cool. I like that. That gives me more to play with than, I see that this person is, lawful good. Well, I'm going to tempt them with hookers and booze over there.
Right. Well, this comes back to the code of conduct. If you are playing a paladin in a way that is going to be engaging for both you and the GM, you have a written code of conduct. Whether it is literally the oaths of being a paladin of your order or your church, or a specific agreement you've made with a god, or a specific agreement you've made with a society, or simply their internal mores, if that's how you want to play it.
Look at you breaking out big words.
As long as you're what's that?
Look at you breaking out big words.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Mores.
Yeah. No, I got you.
It's a big word. I get it, but it's more than just morals. It's how the character functions in the world.
Yeah. Well, Klein and R. Klein 1963 out there actually has a couple good ones. He's saying that it sounds like there's going to be 5e different paladin oaths for all characters. Maybe I don't think it's going to be quite that specific.
I don't think so. I don't hate that idea. I think that the idea of the paladin oaths from 5e, which is something that was pulled over from 4e. Again, everything good about 5e came from 4e.
Is that the hill you're going to die on here? You're like, no, 5th edition.
Yes.
Or 4th edition.
But again, 4th edition is dead, 5th edition is here, but everything good in 5th edition comes from 4th edition. But those oaths provide a very easy hook for a GM and a very easy guideline for a player to understand how his character should be interacting with the world. That's what they're for, and that's why they're great. Yeah,
it's a moral background for your character, which is... I love that far more than just, where are you on this grid. But Richard also points out that the person who's going to hurt by this are those people selling T-shirts with alignments on them. Yeah. There's going to be a lot of pointless BuzzFeed quizzes. So
no one can ever claim to be the chaotic neutral rogue ever again.
Well, they can, and then they're going to be grognards at that point. Just be like, old school. Come to me. But yeah, so
I think that what's going on in chat right now is there's a debate about alignments, and looking at what chat is talking about, I'm going to be honest with you. Like, I think that example of an evil character saving a child because it's a slave, or more specifically their slave, is a great one because this just raises more questions about how detect evil functions, which is exactly why I don't have detect evil. I have a spell that enhances your ability to use, well, in third edition and fourth edition, sense motive, but in fifth edition it would be insight, because that's what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
You're trying to determine intent. You're trying to determine, whether or not a character has some sort of moral code that would force them to behave in such a way. And by the way, I will murder all of the innocents is a moral code. It's just a very strange and fucked up one.
Yeah, that's not a great one.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're seeing a lot of these kind of reassessing what D&D has been for the past 45 years. And there's been a lot of that going on, and I'm excited to see where that's all going.
I mean, just in the last 15 years, we've seen a lot of,
Yeah.
I don't want to say progress, because that's not fair, positive evolution. I'm
Yeah.
going to go with positive evolution in the game's mechanics, more broadly in the worlds that the games are set in, and the ways that, the tropes and archetypes and stereotypes of D&D are being improved on.
Yeah. Well, the biggest way that the best example I can put out on this is that the game was built in TSR, which was just basically some guy's shed, their garage, I guess, and it was built by a handful of dudes just doing, hey, this will be a cool thing. And there's been some significant problems with as it grew up. There was a lot of like, oh yeah, this was written by like a bunch of 20-year-olds. Maybe we can adjust this. But yeah, it's time for us to to keep the hobby alive, to keep the hobby good, and welcoming to a lot of other players. It's worthwhile reassessing ourselves, just looking back and be like, that thing probably could be, why are we doing this? And because it's been here forever is not a valid reason for that.
Yes.
The best example of change for good that I can say to make things more welcoming. I don't know how many of you have actually read the white box, the 3 books in there. There's not great stuff in there. There's actually I think 2 or 3 topless Amazons in there, just listed as just Amazons. We decided 40 years ago that's not cool anymore, and we removed those from the source material.
Yeah. No, I have the old D&Ds. I have Zamal's. But I want to get back to a comment that Corey had, which is that detect good and evil don't apply to mortals, only applies to extraplanar beings. That is as of the 4th edition.
Yeah.
So again, this is an evolution,
works.
right? This is moving away from the ambiguity and the silliness of the idea that you can cast a spell and determine the intent, or even the moral fiber of somebody. It's different when you're talking about a being that is literally constructed of evil
or radiant light, or yeah I feel you,
versus Joe Ranger out in the woods. Again, I'm not saying that those spells are bad per se, and I definitely think they've been improved on since AD&D, when again detect evil could be cast on any. You could walk around town casting detect evil on people, and you'd find an evil person, and then according to Gygax,
you're allowed to kill
a paladin, you should kill them.
Yeah.
We need to understand where alignment came from, to understand why alignment is so regressive.
Yeah, I think that that having something like the 3 to 5 statements of what their moral code is and moving on, I think that'll be worthwhile. But I'm excited to see where Jeremy Crawford is going to be taking it. And I think we're probably going to start seeing it when Icewind Dale drops. There's been a lot of chatter about supplements moving forward are going to actually be moving the game itself forward. So we'll see where that goes.
Mechanical updates. The one thing that pretty much everyone has been asking for, we haven't been receiving. Maybe Rangers will finally get their update.
Yeah, why would we do that? We can get ourselves polar owlbears, and that's way cooler. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, let's talk about this revised release schedule from Mantic Games.
Yeah, now this is going to be slightly more on the miniatures and wargaming side of things, but that's where I got my background for tabletop gaming, so deal with it, guys. But Mantic Games very recently, in the past 3 to 5 years, their sculpts have rounded a corner and are on par with anything else in the industry. I'd say they're on quality with Reaper. They're very, very nice sculpts now, like the old school when they first did some kind of fantasy thing and they had dwarves, and I was like, oh, those look like mid 90s dwarves from like Games Workshop. They were not great. But then they did something new, and now their stuff's coming out as fantastic. I know a lot of people who use their stuff for RPG stuff because it's cheap and
So
it's
are they
very good.
doing are they doing resin presses or resin injects now?
I believe there's still plastic.
Okay.
I haven't bought anything in the past year or two from Mantic, but no, actually I have. But a lot of it is still, all the stuff I've picked up is still plastic. I think they still do some metals and stuff.
Yep.
But what they're talking about actually coming out with, and this is probably going to be actually this is going to entertain both the GMs and the players out there. There's in July they're coming out with some stuff for their Kings of War, which is basically Warhammer Fantasy Battle, but by a different name and slightly tweaked rule set. But it's a rank and flank board game or a tabletop game. So they're coming out with Night Stalkers, which are like nightmare horror kind of army where there's a lot of weird and spooky things that happen there. The two of the models that they're releasing are basically really cool spooky ghosts, and I really like that. They're going to be, and I'm throwing a link in there so anybody that is interested can go check them out. But I think they have like ghost cavalry holding like scythes, and it looks really cool and spooky. It's painted beautifully. Then the other one that they're doing is something called Northern Alliance, basically the wildlings from the Game of Thrones show, and those are all coming out in July. This is a huge release for the wildlings, or for the Northern Alliance, but it's barbarians of like the frozen north, the people with big furry parkas and holding hatchets and axes, and it's a really cool sculpts. So if you're a GM that needs to have some kind of, I don't know, there's something icy coming up at some point in the near future, say you're going to be running Icewind Dale and you need to have some denizens, this is not a bad place to check them out because their boxes aren't expensive. You can get a whole bunch of them, paint those up, and have your towns populated. Then the next thing that they're going to be doing, anybody who's not familiar with Mantic, you do need to know they have a lot of different games under their belt. One of them is they have two tabletop games for the Walking Dead series, and they're both use the same models. One of them's like a skirmish, one of them's like the next scale up. But this one they're releasing are the Whisperers, a whole bunch of people wearing spooky masks and carrying like clubs, and they go beating zombies or something. I don't know. I'm not a fan of the series or the games, but the sculpts look cool, so check those out. September is using, they have some of their ogres coming out, which are really nice ogre sculpts. One of the reasons why I actually wanted to cover this story is just because check out that link. Those are really fun ogres. And that's for their Vanguard is what they're calling it. It's their skirmish game. I haven't played it, so I don't know if it's like Mordheim or Frostgrave or even like Empire of the Dead. There's a lot of weird skirmish games out there, but I've heard good things about this one from people who have played it, and they keep trying to get me to join in. But
So for the uninitiated, skirmish games are a slightly lighter version of those fantasy battles.
yeah, there's a couple different size scales. At one end, you have the full armies where you have you actually end up cutting out templates about that big, putting all your miniatures on there in rank and file, and slide those around the table. On the other side there, you have the solo adventures, which are basically RPGs, where you control one person, maybe with a couple of followers, and there's going to be usually multiple parties out there. And sort of the mid ground is skirmishes, where it's going to be one person controlling maybe a dozen models, but they all act and move independently of each other.
If you've ever met Jeff or myself, we talk about mechs and mech games and how annoying mech games are because you can really never get past lance on lance, which is basically smallest possible force on smallest possible force without the games taking hours and hours and hours. That's what skirmish games are supposed to be, is a shorter version of the game. I genuinely don't know how good Vanguard is at shortening the game, because Kings of War takes 6 or 7 hours to play through an entire battle.
No, I got through Kings of War pretty quickly.
Really?
I found it's not Warhammer Fantasy. I mean, this was...
Warhammer Fantasy Battles is really bad. It's like 8 hours to play a game.
Yeah, yeah, we were usually clocking in about 4 hours for a 3,000 point game for Warhammer Fantasy Battle. I don't know. It's been 5 years since I've played, because they changed the game. But Kings of War, we've done like 2 to 3.
If you're playing with people that are willing to let you roll ahead, and do stuff like that. It can go a lot faster.
Yeah,
But,
the chess
uh,
clock.
yeah.
But yeah, so it's a fun way to get out there, paint small amounts of miniatures, and get going. There is something else though that they have coming out.
Oh, right.
Which,
Affordability, that's the other big thing that service games have.
yeah, you
You
don't
don't
need to take out a
you,
second mortgage to start a new game.
yeah.
But they also have something coming out with goblins in October. They didn't say what, but there's a picture of a pretty cool goblin standing next to a wolf.
I
So
like goblins.
yeah, who doesn't like goblins? They're the fun guys in the universe. So like I said, their sculpts have really improved. So if you haven't looked at Mantic in the past 3 to 5 years and you just think that they're garbage, check them out. There's some pretty interesting stuff in there, and I think that you might find something in there that you want to add in for other stuff.
So the final piece of new game news is that World of Games has posted new rules for the Korean War book. Bolt action rifles and it looks like flamethrower tanks here.
Yeah, so Bolt Action is their World War II game series, and they've kind of beaten that horse dead. It's the nature of the beast when you're doing World War II games. You either have to realize that no one's going to keep buying your books after you finish the war, or you're going to have to reset the system and resell them books. Flames of War did that a couple times, and I know people kind of walked away from that system. I know I did, because it was like, all right, well, I don't need to buy the same campaign 4 different times because you've reset it 4 times in 4 years. Instead of doing that, Warlord Games, they're on their second edition of Bolt Action, I believe. And they've just moved, they decided to start taking the war and moving it to other theaters that are slightly before, slightly after. So this one is the Korea War. So the army lists from World War II are not compatible here. But what they do have are the book that you buy for the Korean War has everything you need to be able to run as Soviets, as North Koreans, as South Koreans, as the United Nations forces, as the Chinese, as anything. Like anybody that was there are rules for you in the book, and it's a great way to go. I think you do still need the main rulebook to just get the mechanics of things going. But overall, the Korean War stuff is an interesting way to move the hobby forward. You get to play with a whole bunch of new tech. You can get dogfighting with jets, which is just my favorite thing to ever have happened in the sky. But what with the announcement that they came out recently it was actually timed right around the 70th anniversary of the kickoff of the war, is a whole bunch of experimental rules. So they're going to have things like flamethrower tanks, the ability to shoot flares out of your howitzers, so you can actually light up and ignore night fighting rules. A couple different variation of rules for their tanks, but the big thing there is that they're moving the game forward. They're trying to keep it lively without breaking everybody's budget, because this is a free update. It's like, hey,
So
check out these rules.
That's interesting to me because all these things that became standard practice in the Korean War were all things that had happened on a much more limited scale in World War II.
Yeah, it was a very experimental time for warfare was evolving in World War II. And then the Korean War was like, all right, what's the old phrase? It's like, we learn how to fight the last war in time for the next one. So everything that we learned in World War II was applied in Korea, which is kind of why Chosen Reservoir was hot garbage. Like, that was a very bad time. They weren't prepared for that because they were prepared for other things happening in the European theater. But that's pretty much all I have to say about the Warlord Games thing. I haven't dropped that in the chat yet. So to the people in the chat, while I'm highlighting and dropping this in for you, are there any message or any news stories that you want that? Oh, here we go. I didn't get that right. Sorry. Copy pasting is hard. Are there any news stories of the week that we didn't cover, but you would like to have seen? Anything that you saw came out and we just happened to completely miss it? There's a brand new type of dice coming out or something cool. Let us know in the chat. We love hearing from you guys.
Please don't link any dice Kickstarters because we're bad.
Yeah.
No self-control.
On that front, actually, I'm going to lean over here and grab my fancy dice.
Don't do it.
If you are a fan of Call of Cthulhu games, we did a Call of Cthulhu one-shot, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago at this point, that had it was just a one-shot on, I think Falcon Weave couldn't go that weekend or that week, so we ran one. It was a good time. The company that I years ago got into Elder Dice because I'm stupid and have a dice problem, and they make Cthulhu-themed dice, polyhedral dice sets. Right now, I think that for about $99, they have a set where you get basically 3 sets of dice, ooh ah, in this fancy box, ooh ah, and they're all Cthulhu themed and all that, so it's like $30 a set. But if you're looking for another set of dice or another box set of dice, these do look really nice on my shelf. You can't see, but it's right there. Well, it's back there actually. But yeah, they look really nice on your shelf. They're really cool. I'm going to plug them. I don't have a link for them, but look them up. elderdice.com, I think, is where they're at. And they're having a sale right now.
Feel the money flying out of my wallet right now.
Make it rain. But yeah, I think that's that. I don't have a whole lot of Kickstarters. If that's something you guys are interested in, we can keep our fingers on the pulse of Kickstarters for you. Sound off in the chat and we'll check it out, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll do that, but on a limited basis.
Yeah.
And we'll definitely spread it out because we don't want to buy everything.
I mean, I do, but I also want to eat and feed, give my cats a better life. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think we should probably take a break and
yeah.
Definitely, if you guys have anything that you think that we should have covered, please drop a link or let us know in chat, and we'll hit that as soon as we get back from this break.
Yeah, so we're going to take a 5-7 minute break or so, and we'll be back in a few minutes. All right. See you guys in a bit.
Yep.
Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm still Mac, and that is still Rob. And yeah, so welcome back everybody. So looking through the chat here, besides what looks like it was a successful heist, which those are cool things. It looks like there was one story that we missed. Apparently, Critical Role's coming back this week. I don't actually watch them, so I don't know when they go. But if you guys know their deets, throw them wherever the chat is for you guys, and we'll, people check it out. It's a very popular time, I believe. But everything else, I think, is pretty much covered, right? If we missed something when the heist kicked off, let us know. No, my bank account. My cats are spoiled. Yeah, they do have an adorable sombrero that they hate. So, anyway, yeah. So let's. Thursdays at 7 Pacific. So that times nicely to watch Whiskey, Magic, and Destruction with the two of us, and then go watch those new guys Critical Role. Anyway,
it's a good strong lead in.
Yeah, what I lack in skill, I make up for in confidence. So,
you know what? Let's dig into these projects because we've got a lot and we want to get through these.
There are a lot of things going on. So, what have you been up to? It's been a while since we've had you on. So,
do not tell Reed. I am actually once again working on. We'll call them one shots. But really what I'm doing is building a pile of character archetypes so that I can build one-shot adventures around them.
So. Yeah, that's for Star Wars, right?
Because I know Reed would like me to run things besides Star Wars, I'm actually doing for other stuff as well.
Stars Without Numbers?
Shh.
Well, I know there's people in the chat out there that would be very interested in seeing some Stars Without Numbers happening.
So. Yeah. Well, yeah, no, Reed loves Star Wars. I know that, Reed. Everybody loves Star Wars on some level. Because Star Wars is, it's the heroic journey.
Yeah, it's the monomyth that we talked about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like we have these things planned out. Yeah. Space opera. Yes, exactly.
But Stars Without Numbers is old school space opera in the vein of Traveler, with 400% less death and character creation.
Oh.
I should point out that there is a variant set of rules for character generation in Stars Without Number where you can die in character creation.
There we go. That's the answer I was looking for right there. Stars Without Number for the win.
Because it is important.
Yeah, that's. I'd actually really want to see another, one of those like games you can't make it out of, or you have a chance of not making it out of character creation is Paranoia. That could be a lot of fun to be running in that kind of wacky situation too. But tell us more about Stars Without Number and dying in character creation.
Yeah, we'll talk about this real quick because this is leading back to the fact that Stars Without Numbers is a D20 take on the granddaddy of space opera games. I guess is probably the fair way to put it. Is Traveler, which came out in 1977. And the interesting thing about Traveler is that when you're doing character generation, you're basically creating an entire character's backstory in certain phases. But one of the things that can happen is if you roll, depending on how you look at this, either well enough or poor enough, the character dies in the generation process. So they're no longer a playable character. You've just created a dead character and you go back to the character generation process. It was one of the first games to have, I guess you would call this story path generation.
Oh, kind of like not unlike the this is your life kind of thing that
yeah
that makes sense.
It's story path generation, and if you roll well you can get a very advanced and therefore older character, but if you roll poorly you get a younger, less advanced, but probably far more trainable in the general sense of things, because Traveler, one of the fun things about Traveler is that actually getting around takes time. So characters can and will die of old age in the course of a campaign.
That's pretty cool. Well, looking at Yanzam out there saying that he apparently he or she has been playing one of them in the past and would just wish that they would die once they realized it started sucking. So yeah, I think we've all been there. I know with one of my favorite systems with DCC, if you have a negative Constitution modifier that's bad enough, and then you also roll for HP, there's a very real possibility that you just didn't survive character creation either. It's rare. More often than not, you end up with like 1 or 2 hit points, but it's still not great.
So there is a character path generation method for Stars Without Numbers that, while I find very amusing, from the perspective of, hey, I can do this thing, is sort of not how you should play the game.
Yeah, I can see that. That's one of the problems I'm having with trying to build some higher level DCC characters. Is you need to have the level 0 funnel and build all that nonsense. It's a ponderous creation system. So, but I'm excited to see what you're going to end up coming out with Stars Without Numbers. You know, you're a fun DM to make fun of, or to taunt from this side of the screen. So
one of the fun things is that with Stars Without Numbers, I'm free to steal whatever I want, like Firefly.
Ooh, I mean, who doesn't love that? Any you working on anything else, or is that pretty much? I mean, not that that's nothing, but
I just got a physical copy of Seeds of War,
Ooh.
which is sort of I guess an echo of Birthright, which is my personal favorite AD&D game.
Okay.
The very short version is that Birthright is D&D for kings. Your character is a lord of some sort, whether it's a traditional militant lord, a paladin who runs a temple, a rogue who runs a trade coster, or a wizard who controls the magic of a territory. And like, it's straight up, you control the ley lines of a territory because you're a wizard.
I mean, that's how wizards do.
Right. But that's the general idea, and then you build your resources, and you can use your resources to do things on your turns, like field an army, or take over enemy territories, or steal somebody else's ley line magic to do something, like cast a giant spell,
Ooh.
where you make rain clouds sit over their territory for months at a time.
Okay. What was the system?
It's AD&D.
Okay.
The game was written by Richard Baker and another guy, and I feel really bad for getting his name, but it's Richard Baker. So if you're familiar with old school D&D, you know who Richard Baker is and why he's great.
Well, it's cool. Yeah, I'm always looking for new things to be playing in the old school arena.
It's a way of breaking up the grind of adventuring in a traditional campaign, where you take a couple hours every session or two, and you say, all right, now we're going to do domain turns, and you get to figure out what you want to do with your domain turns.
Domain turns. Yeah, I mean, it sounds exciting. No.
Again, it's not for everybody, and I get that.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Yeah, I can see how it would be fun for a certain if you're itching to do some bureaucracy or some large meta scale size things. Yeah, I can see it actually being a really good time, not just following the one dude doing one thing. Cool. Well, personally, I've been doing a lot of random other nonsense. Let's start with, I made that hat up there because I realized I don't have a wizard hat, so I made a wizard hat. It glows in the dark. That's probably my proudest thing I've done this week. But I also bought, for my favorite game, the Dungeon Crawl Classics Annual. Ooh, I can hear the audience just loving it right now. Anybody out there should know that my favorite game is Dungeon Crawl Classics. Just because I talk about it just so much. But the one reason I picked this up is because this has the 4 best pages of rules that I've ever owned. It is the Stash Magic Mustaches for Dungeon Crawl Classics RPG. So it has 4 pages of how you can spawn a magical mustache. There's rules for ladies having mustaches too, so it's it's a cool time. And then you can get into magical mustache duels, and they all have special powers. It's fun. It's wacky. It's exactly what I want out of my old school dungeon crawls. But it fits nicely on my shelf over there as I throw it that way. Besides that, been on Saturday, there's a couple people in the chat actually that were part of a game. Actually, most of them are out there that were part of the game that I'm starting to run. It's the old school adventures, or original adventures reincarnated by Goodman Games, same people who do Dungeon Crawl Classics. but they basically took a whole bunch of the first and second modules that were coming out for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and then actually ported them back up to 5th edition. So we did our first session. We did our session 0 last weekend. We did our first session this previous weekend, and it went well. I mean, there was minimal amounts. There was a lot. There was a lot of death. They killed a lot of bullywogs. But I think they lost a grand total of like 6 hit points across the entire party, and it was all off one guy. So they beat my dungeon far better than I was expecting them to, because my dice were rolling like hot garbage.
You are a bad old school DM.
Yeah.
Remember, it's not a real adventure if no one dies.
Well, this was the preamble on their way to the adventure. It's coming.
Okay.
They're going to be entering a more traditional dungeon soon, with pit traps and backdraft rules and all sorts of great things. It's gonna be fantastic. I'm looking forward to it. And I know they all got bitten by bullywogs twice. It was only twice. I thought it was 3 times. Oh, they're taking that away from me. Other than that, I've been doing a lot of reading because I can only scroll so much YouTube and Netflix, and I think I've actually hit the end of the internet. So I've been going back through my book pile. You can't see it, but I have a even bigger over there bookshelf that's full of even more nerdy stuff than what I have here.
So what you're telling me is you got to the video of the guy doing the chicken dance to Guile's theme.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've been reading a whole lot of other stuff. Between I enjoy the Warhammer 40,000 novels, but something that actually got me turned on to this it came out of our Discord chat. So people, please consider checking out our Discord, because you can add into these fantastic conversations. Is somebody was talking about books and things that it suggested that as Happy Hour we start talking about literature a little bit. And that got me thinking, it's like, all right, yeah, we can do this. It's been an idea I've been mulling about a little bit, trying to get like a book club going or something, but we don't need anything that formal yet. Instead, I reread my favorite book. And this is going to come as a shocker to nobody. It's Beowulf. Hey, check that out. And it has to be the Seamus Heaney translation. I am adamant about that because the rest of them are garbage. Fritz Lieber, Fafra and the Grey Mouser. No, that's
Fafra and the Grey Mouser is an excellent book that I will talk about eventually.
Yeah, we'll get there.
He is seminal sword and sorcery, but we're not there yet.
Yeah. So this is a flawless segue into our books. So yeah, check out Beowulf. If you guys haven't, I actually do have a link here for how to pick up the Seamus Heaney translation, because when I say it's the best translation available, it really is, because it is written, or it wasn't even written. It was a oral tradition poem that was passed down by literal bards, and it's 1,400 years old, give or take a couple centuries.
There may have been a couple of jongleurs in there as well.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff in there. But it's the idea is basically it's your stereotypical hero. It's a maybe of noble blood, maybe not. They don't really, or actually they do go into it. He is of noble blood. And it's a guy, Beowulf, who sails to, I believe it's Denmark. A family friend basically is having problems in his mead hall where a monster is coming and killing people. So he shows up, he fights the monster, rips the monster's arm off. I would say spoiler alert, but you guys have had 1,400 years to read this. So, no?
Or just watch the movie.
Hey, whoa. So I'm now looking for someone else to fill that slot on the Games Tavern Happy Hour. So yeah,
by the way, I've watched 2 Beowulf movies and neither of them made any sense to me. And I've read Beowulf, I've read Heaney's translation, which makes a lot more sense. Mm-hmm. So please don't watch the movies.
Well, do watch the movies. They're awful and delightful, but they're bad. But the Beowulf here, it has everything that you could look at it. You could see sort of the proto origins of fantasy. It has a larger than life hero. I believe it's actually described he's strong as 30 men. Beowulf is a monster. Like, he is the kind of guy who goes swimming across the English Channel wearing armor, because there's sea monsters, and he goes swimming across so he doesn't get eaten by one. But then he ends up getting like dragged down into the deep of the abyss and has to draw his sword. He was also swimming with a sword. and gets into a fight and kills a sea monster, which is why he loses his swimming contest. That's just a thing. But there's a whole bunch of great stuff in there. He's unequivocally a good guy in the beginning. He's fighting literally this, the spawn of evil. I believe it's a spawn of Cain. I am very dirty on my.
Talking about Grendel?
Yeah, Grendel. He's a direct descendant of Cain from the Bible.
I can't remember that being true, but you're probably right.
Yep.
You know what? The Beowulf is fantastic.
I own 5 copies of this, one for each room of my house.
It's a great encapsulation of the whole Germanic tradition on heroes.
Yeah, it's
Germanic heroes are larger than life, even when they're doing regular life things.
Yeah, they absolutely are, and a lot of the things that we see in modern RPGs actually get not necessarily their origins, because I'm not going to make a blanket statement about what poems came first or whatnot, but the oldest record that we have right now is pointing to a lot of this stuff coming from Beowulf. Because at one point he has to go into an underwater cave and come up and fight, and there's fresh air and there's light and there's dragons' hordes of treasure. There's not a dragon. There's in fact Grendel's mother there. But he then has to fight the big bad boss there. That's a dungeon crawl with a treasure room at the end. That's amazing. And that happened, centuries, over a millennia ago. That's really cool stuff. Then at the end he ends up having to fight a dragon on an actual horde of, like, a mountain of gold. That's amazing. I love that stuff. And I glossed over a lot of stuff in there. But my cat is Beowulf.
Most of the fact that
my other cat is Weeloff.
Drinks with the, what was the Constitution of 15 Men?
Yeah, so he can't drink as strong as he is.
Yeah.
So how about
in the same vein?
Yeah, what do you got?
Yeah, no, I love Beowulf. But in the same vein, I love another story, another old story. It's called the Kalevala. It is the national story of Finland.
Ooh, Finland. Who doesn't love Finland?
I don't say that lightly, because it is literally their national story. It's like their national origin story, and also the most beloved story in Finland.
Well, how about you guys check this out? Boom, bam, enjoy.
That is a copy of Francis McGowan's translation of the Kalevala, which is probably the best version for people that aren't scholars.
Yeah, I'm very similar on that. With there are more accurate translations of, like, the Seamus Heaney, or of Beowulf, than Seamus Heaney's, and I'm sure this stands with the Kalevala also, where the accurate ones aren't enjoyable to read.
Yes,
they're just not written that way. So I'm glad that there's sort of a resurgence now of making these things enjoyable. Not working. You sent me a bad link. Hold on, let me try again. I put a period on there.
Period on there.
Boom. Try that one.
So the Kalevala is fun because it is a hero story with multiple heroes. And it is a story in which we have the origin of several of the tropes that you see carried over into Tolkien's fantasy. The angelic wizard, the supernatural origin wizard.
Yeah, the Maiar. Okay.
In the body of Vanamoinen. Vanamoinen is fundamentally a supernatural being, but he's a supernatural being that is forced to wander around Finland doing good things and fixing things. We have the origin of some of the traits about dwarves, with Ilmarinen, the smith.
Okay.
And I should be clear that Tolkien was very clear in his letters that the dwarves are supposed to be not a parallel to, but an homage to the Jewish culture.
I think he describes them as a Semitic race.
Yeah, and Dwarven is a Semitic language.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So there's that too. But yeah, no. But a lot of the other traits of dwarves are taken from Ilmarinen and the descriptions of the Nordic Svartalfar. That's a whole nother conversation.
Can you say that word again?
Svartalfar.
Okay, just double check.
Black elves. But also, notably, the Kalevala is the origin of elves in the Tolkien tradition. And people get very confused about this because there are Alfar, which are elves, in the Nordic mythologies, but the ones that Tolkien was using were the ones from the Kalevala.
Well, aren't and I'm know I'm going to butcher this, and it's kind of embarrassing that I even have to ask you, but aren't Nordic elves not unlike the Icelandic elves, which are really more like fairies or gnomes?
No,
No,
the
okay, no, I
Nordic
tried.
Alfar are kind of angelic. In you know, there's a connection back to the the dichotomy between good and evil in Alfar and Sword Alfar, but it's not necessarily in the same way that we look at elves and drow
Yeah,
in the modern dichotomy. That they're not. It's not the same thing. Sword Alfar are not fundamentally evil people. And in fact, in some of the poems, the heroic poems of Norse tradition, the Svartalfar are key to winning victories against Hel and other dark powers.
as that
So,
seems like a worthwhile argument to be having, yeah, or fight
yep,
to be on the good side of.
yep. But yeah,
Seeing
no,
dwarves are the
the
truth. Okay.
Kalevala is deep, and it is also, I think, probably responsible for the deep and abiding love of knives amongst Finnish people. So
Okay.
knives are very, very important in this story.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I need to check that out. Yeah. That's so that's both those are available. You have the links to our to the Amazons there. If you want to check them out. I highly recommend. I have not read the Kalevala, so I'm just going off your your recommendation there that it's
All
an
right.
enjoyable
So
time.
I guess high points. Again, you guys have had the modern version of the Kalevala that we read now was codified in 1838 or something like that.
Yeah, not
And
unlike the poetic Edda kind of thing where it's sort of
this
mashed
yeah,
together
Snorri
by.
Sturluson translated the Poetic Edda in the late 1800s or something like that. But the story itself is much older and part of the oral tradition. And it has all kinds of rad stuff, like Vainamoinen has to fight a sea monster that he kills, and then he takes the jaw of and makes a radical fucking loot. It, you know,
Bars used to
it,
be so cool.
yeah, right, yeah. If you're a bard and you're like, this is my axe, it's made from the jaw of a behemoth that I killed myself. You're like, that's not really the kind of bard that we think about, but yeah,
Yeah, I'll
that's
take.
pretty cool.
If all bards were like that, I would be much more happy about the class. But
Yeah.
overall, I'm just it's like fiddly dee. Yeah, music.
But yeah, and again, like I said, it has it all. It's got a wizard. It's got a wizard's traveling companions, a quest that keeps getting extended because more and more things get added to it with side quests, which is very, very, very traditional now. It's got crafting, which is huge, but it has the kind of crafting that I really dig, which is that old school. You have to quest for the components that we require to make the thing that you
Yeah,
want.
that makes sense. I'm glad to see that that's has that kind of tradition in it. Now, did you say this earlier? When was the timeline that we're looking at here? Because Beowulf, we're talking about pre-Christian world, 600s or so in the up in Denmark in the Anglo-Saxon era. Where
I
are we
don't
looking at it for the Kalevala? What's the
I
timeline there?
don't think the Kalevala is quite that old.
Okay.
I think the story of Wainamoinen may be as old as 800, 900 AD.
Okay, I believe that's some of the more conservative estimates about when Beowulf was first written down, or about that time too. So yeah, it's oral traditions.
But again, it was never written down until like 1838. So it was alive in the oral tradition of the Sami peoples
Oh, that's
until
awesome.
1838, and then it was written down. So it's an old story, but it was never recorded.
Yeah, it'd be like someone writing down. I don't know. I can't think of anything in the English tradition.
Shakespeare.
But that is written. That was written down from the very beginning.
Right, but the stories that Shakespeare was retelling weren't.
Yes. Was it Kate and Leopold? Or no, Tristan and Isolde. Kate and Leopold's a different thing.
Yeah. Tristan and Isolde. Really, The Merchant of Venice is an old story that Shakespeare wasn't the first to write down, but he wrote down the best version.
Yeah, true. So everybody out in the chat, we've told you our two recommendations of the foundations, the proto fantasy. If there's something out there that you want us to talk about in the future, let us know. Put it into the chat there. We're always looking for. I think chat's on that side, right? No, that side. I don't know. Chat's out
Unless
there.
it's unless it's Malazan Book of the Fallen, we're not going to talk about that.
Yeah, maybe, maybe not.
No, neither of us has time to do a doctoral dissertation on a fantasy novel.
I don't know about you, but I have nothing else going on with my. Actually, I have a lot
Facts.
going on. But yeah, if there's something out there, a book that is sort of the foundations, a song, a poem, just think about the Song of Roland is something that we could talk about on that, but that's a little bit later. It's about 1000 AD.
Yeah,
Silmarillion.
and
Read,
it's
you are
also,
an awful human being. Silmarillion
it's,
is no, go away. We'll get to that
yeah,
when we get to the 1900s.
I've read the Silmarillion several times,
You
and I
must
still
have.
don't understand what I'm supposed to take away from it.
Well, I mean, if while we're on topic, I can brag about this. I picked up because it's vaguely on topic, right? I picked up a couple. I went to a used bookstore. As I drop all my stuff, I still have.
You didn't get stuff anyway.
Okay. Oh no, I've lost you. There we go. All right. Sorry about that, everybody. I dropped all my crap. And by crap, I mean these things. I picked up a Tolkien dictionary, which is exactly what it looks like. It's a quick description of a variety of different things. I can't pronounce that word. Here we go. Galadriel has half a page to tell you who Galadriel is. Fun stuff. It's a really nice book. Faux leather. Tastes great. But it has a companion book, which is one that I am far more excited about because this is very much the jam of this program. Encyclopedia of Tolkien. It is not the dictionary. The dictionary is these are the fake things that Tolkien wrote about. The Encyclopedia of Tolkien is the history and mythology that inspired Middle-earth, that inspired Tolkien's work. So look at this in a future episode when we actually end up going into Lord of the Rings and Tolkien and all that. So we will be getting there. But I picked that up about a week ago.
To be clear, Gandalfar is a made-up name. It's not a real name.
Yeah.
But the character of Gandalf is actually based a lot on Vainamoinen because Vainamoinen is also on a mission from God.
I thought he was based on the Blues Brothers.
Yes, that is also true.
Mm-hmm. So that we're gonna have to do that episode at some point and just compare compare the Blues Brothers to Gandalf the Grey. Let's make it happen. So there we go. We have R. Klein 1963 is talking, saying that Rob mentioned the prose Edda. We're talking about a lot of names like Gandalf. Yes, we will talk about that. Not now. We have a whole bunch of other stuff that we want to talk about. It's going to be a much larger segment than just.
We have to talk about both the prose Edda and the poetic Edda.
Yeah.
So
one of the a big book that or a role playing game that I keep recommending is right here. There we go.
Fate of the Norns.
Fate of the Norns. What? But the manufacturer of that, the guy who wrote Fate of the Norns, also he's basically a doctor in that in Nordic mythology.
Which sounds like a radical job, to be honest with you.
He's a really cool guy. He runs the booth at PAX and all the conventions, and you can sit down and play the game with the author. Fantastic. We'll go into that in more detail later. But for the prose Edda, he actually has a copy of the illuminated Edda that he ended up translating and getting the same artist who did that stuff. It's beautiful stuff. And it's killing me I don't own it yet, but I want to save up and get like the ultimate edition. It's a little pricey. But we will talk about all of that stuff in a future episode. I guarantee you on that one because I care about it too much. And the prose Edda and the poetic Edda and the illuminated Edda and all that great stuff is beautiful. Everybody loves talking about that, and we will do it. Anything else we're missing? Because why is my mouse freaking out?
Yeah, we have talked. Actually, we talked a lot about books that we refer to, and we decided to start with the big daddies, the ancient roots of the tropes. But we do need to talk about all of the Eddas. That's an entire episode, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. So recommendations for tonight. If you are, we're not really doing a book club. If that's something that there's interest in, we can do that and actually talk about, get it back and forth going with everybody on stream later. But for now, I highly recommend following the two links there for the Kalevala and then for Beowulf, because these are the two books that we recommend for this kind of era to check those out and just see where the foundations of fantasy. Where you read Beowulf, you will see, hey, that's where this thing came from. Very cool.
And at some point, I will talk about and probably bore Mac to death with The Water Margin and Journey to the West, because those are two things that I actually know pretty well. I have read both. Unfortunately, I don't read ancient Chinese, Han Chinese, so I can't read
Why
them
are
in
you
the
even here,
original
then, man?
language.
Get out of here.
I know, but I've read at this point probably a dozen translations. So
Nice. I've read the video game.
Journey to the West.
There's a Journey to the West video game, and
Okay.
it's bad.
I believe you. And, there's. So you're probably familiar with Journey to the West and don't even know it because it's also Dragon Ball Z.
Yes. Well, actually, I've never seen Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, I'm familiar with actual Journey to the West. That's.
Yeah.
I have multiple copies and a favorite version of Beowulf. I've read old books.
You know ancient Chinese literature. I get it.
Yeah. No, I literally only know Journey to the West.
But these, well, there's 4 of them. I've only read 3.
Okay.
And I can't remember the name of the 4th right now. They are seminal to Chinese fantasy, Zhangzhe and Wuxia. So we'll talk about that too eventually.
Yeah, so we're digging into all that. So just again, takeaways here. Check out Beowulf and the Kalevala if you're interested, and they're both relatively inexpensive books. These are the best translations that we personally really enjoy, and you can get on our level with historical nerdery, I guess. I completely forgot about this. One of the reasons I love this translation is that you can't see. Oh, there we go.
Yep,
You have both the English and the Old English side by side. So if you are studying Old English, this is actually the book that you pick up, because he somehow manages to make it work. It's beautiful. The structure works across it. But yeah.
But also, why? Why are you studying Old English?
So I can read the second half of my Beowulf book. I'm not sure I understand the question here. There's actually a Facebook character group person. I don't know. It's on Facebook. But it's Old English memes.
There you go.
It's just memes, but in Old English. And
there is a Roman Latin memes network as well.
Latin's so mainstream. Gosh, why would you?
Not Roman Latin. Most people are familiar only with what's taught in school, which is not actually Latin.
And then Catholic Latin.
And Church Latin.
Yeah.
Which is, again, not actually Latin.
So much fun. Well, speaking of things to look, I'm just going to radically change gears here because we're getting into weird places. Speaking of things you can read, that holds water. Dragon Magazine. I didn't realize it was back because I'm a bad nerd, but it's available and it's free. You just go onto Wizard's website. Website. And you can actually click. I think it's Dragon Plus now. I don't think it's necessarily Dragon Magazine. Dragon Plus. There we go. And there's a whole bunch of really interesting stuff in there. The last one dropped last Tuesdays, and I didn't know about it, so we can talk about it that episode. But they have some really cool stuff in there. And it's also a mobile app if you want to, read it on the go, if you have a fun commute or something, or you want to read it on the couch. But the thing I am most interested in is it came out in this recent episode. I'm going to go and throw it in there, our most recent issue. They talked about more Icewind Dale stuff. So there's a whole bunch of great stuff in there from Icewind Dale. Of course, they were speaking with, I believe it was one of the designers that actually worked on the on the book. There we go. Come on, there we go. Okay, so it's April Prime. So she did a whole bunch of like the art for Icewind Dale. And after having read this article, I am so excited to pick up this book because the art is absolutely amazing. I know last week we were kicking around, sort of joking about polar owlbears and it's polar bear owlbears. Click on that link, guys. There is, in the first scroll, there are 7 polar owlbears. Just amazing, amazing art. I highly recommend checking it out. But other stuff that she went in there, she actually talks about how she kind of decided to differentiate between the continental owlbears. I don't know. But the owlbear we all know and love, to what she wanted to do to kind of change it to make it more terrifying and polar, and a whole bunch of other stuff in there. So if you're into the art, if you're one of those people who can actually make art, you will find this fantastic. If you just like learning and seeing how people that are passionate about something talk about it, read this. It's so cool. Specifically, this article is really, really awesome, and inspired me to go see what other random things I could find about the Icewind Dale sort of, I guess, leaks or things that they're talking about. Rob, if I were to tell you about that vampire gnolls are a thing, how would you react?
I'd probably just shrug it off because I've seen a lot of gnolls.
But vampire gnolls?
It just sounds like something would be into. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, that sort of took the wind out of that sails there.
However, the idea of polar gnolls that are somehow more scary and frightening than regular gnolls in the vein of polar owlbears. Owlbears are really scary, dude. I mean, they're also cute, but they're super scary.
They are. They will tear up an adventuring party.
Yeah.
But the vampire gnoll is an interesting thing. I saw someone do a whole think piece about why that's absolutely terrifying. Because vampires, well, because apparently, vampires in D&D aren't Dracula. Like, they don't bite you and then you die and become a vampire. There's a whole other thing going on there. You got to drink their blood, and they have to let you into the whole clubhouse, and it's wild. But gnolls are apparently like hyenas or wolves or something that were on a demi-plane of existence with a demon and ended up like eating its food or something and became like insatiably hungry, or some other like demonic intervention to make these things. So the implications here are that...
There was with
sorry?
The demi-demon of hunger or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. So what happened with a vampire gnoll is there was a gnoll that a vampire fed on, and then it's like, what would be a good idea? Making this thing a vampire. Boom, problem solved. Right, drink that. There we go. Problem solved. Go in the world and make Icewind Dale a terrifying place. So it's just one of the many, many reasons I am very excited to see Icewind Dale.
Probably Forgotten Realms is the death of good ideas.
Yeah, that's where good ideas are going to die. Fair point. I mean, there's a lot of great ideas out there, though. The piece of art I am most excited for from Icewind Dale, though, let's see if I want to make sure I actually get this right, because it is very important to have the right name. So there's a sort of a meme going around on the internet, I guess, of like kobolds in a trench coat. Like, it's like, oh, that wasn't an innkeeper you saw. It was, in fact, just 3 kobolds in a trench coat. Ha ha ha.
Right, yes. Every NPC is actually just 3 kobolds in a trench coat.
Yeah. And that's a thing that is happening in the dark corners of the internet. The D&D artist Scott Murphy has made this piece of art. Let's see if I can actually get this to work. There we go. That is 3 kobolds in a parka. Apparently that's official art. I'm super excited to see what's going to be happening in the situation, because that is absolutely ridiculous.
I don't know what to say about that. I mean, other than, wow, 3 kobolds in a coat have come a long way.
It's it looks like it's going to sneak into like an R-rated movie. I'm really excited. So is there, on the art side out there, people, is there any artists that you recommend we check out? I'm still new into the art scene for fantasy. My knowledge of it sort of begins and ends with Boris Vallejo.
Wow. So you're trapped in 1963.
Shut up. Max Dunbar. That's not a real name. So these are the kind of... I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this because it's all over you. There we go. So these are the kind of conversations that we have in the Discord chat. Highly recommend you guys come check it out. There's a lot of really great artists that are in our artist and makers section. Mm-hmm. And they're posting great stuff all the time.
And and yes, they post a lot of great stuff, and occasionally folks will post something that they saw that just really hit them hard.
Yeah,
Um,
I need to figure out how to get kobolds in a trench coat into that because it's so cool. And it's like, I win. I found the best
yep.
picture on the internet.
Did you though? I mean, there are cat photos on the internet.
Touche. Touche. So, go ahead.
I I don't have any artists that I follow particularly. I'm very much a I consume art at the rate that, you know, if I'm interested in something, I find it on the internet, and if it's there, that's great, and if it's not there, okay. Um, I do have a ton of character art that I use
Ooh.
to inspire characters. But it's acquired in ye old way that is not great for artists, which is that I'm not out there actually contracting the artists. I'm letting other people do that for me, and then taking those characters and using them for ideas. So I use this in NPC development a lot. Actually, is I have a picture that I'm never going to show to the players.
Issues that
Uh,
sort of inspiration. You build the story for that character, and yeah,
yes.
that makes
Yep.
sense.
And because I've already built a story and I have an index card for that character, when I look at that picture again, everything comes back. So I'm able to get very quickly back into that character. And that's just one of the things that I do. It's a tool that I use. You know what? We've talked about the methods of GMing, and flying by the seat of your pants versus carefully planning things out. Um, and
Yeah,
I
that's
think
the
that,
best comment I've seen.
exactly. I was like, wow, that is a great comment.
It's like, does that say what I think it says?
Yeah. But using art in your process is a big deal. And again, you know, visual art is just another kind of art.
Yeah.
Literature is another kind of art. And
Music.
we're going to
I've
talk
gotten
about
big into
books.
filk recently.
Yeah, yeah. And music is also can be a big contributor to your process, especially if your process is listening to creepy dungeon music.
It's not. I use that for ambience. No, no. The stuff I do is it's filk. It's like folk, but with an I because some
Yeah.
typesetter was stupid. But it's basically nerdy folk music. And there's a whole bunch of really interesting stories in a lot of those that I just listen to. I'm like, yep, this is cool. I want to listen to this. But
Is that the
yeah,
guy who sings was the story of Bilbo Baggins?
Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah, yes, also Leonard Nimoy. Is that filk music?
I believe it's yeah. I think that would fall in right around the category of folk. Yeah, but Bilbo,
Yeah.
Bilbo, Bilbo Baggins, the bravest little hobbit of them all. Uh, yeah, that would fall into folk. It's sort of fan music stuff that won't get you sued, or could get you sued if you make a lot of money. Who knows? But some of the stuff I listen to is unique, and it's not based off of IPs. It's based off of ideas and veins.
Okay.
Like there's one I have. It's Carmen Miranda's Ghost.
Oh, I love Carmen Miranda's Ghost,
Fantastic, right?
which 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 I need to explain to people is based off of like if Xanadu and Barbarella had a baby.
Yeah, yeah. But there's also an album named Carmen Miranda's Ghost that's kind of based off of that whole idea.
Mhm.
And so that's a fun one. But that's space folk. There's what is the one? I don't remember the name of the album, but it has like songs like The Wizard of Mackeytown and 9 to 5 Barbarian. For it's fantastic. Like you got to listen to it. I love it so much. But it's a guy who's a barbarian, but he punches the clock and that's what he does for the day, and then he goes home. So it's like I love this kind of music. It's a lot of fun and it's kind of wacky and old school. So
But I'm gonna drag us back around again.
yeah, do it.
We're deep in art right now. There's a ton of good art posting going on,
Ooh,
which I love. But again, we want to hear from you, the people that are in chat and the people that watch this, about what we should be talking about book-wise, because we know where we wanted to start, which is at the very beginning with the Granddaddies. Um, but going forward from there, I mean, I read a lot. I read a lot of good and I read a lot of bad. I've read a lot of mainstream, and I just don't recommend using mainstream fantasy writing in your process. You're much better off using Terry Pratchett than you are using Terry Brooks.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Um,
And if we were to approach this, chronologically, we'll get another two or three things. We'll get the poetic eddas, maybe a couple small sagas and songs, and then we're gonna have to jump forward to 1900. So we're rapidly running out of things here, guys. So if you have anything out there that you want to sort of talk about or you want us to dig into and look into for literature inspiration that you have, or you think it's, hey, this is kind of where this stuff built into, this module. I can
so
see where it got its inspiration, etc.
right now we're talking about granddaddies. Basically, we can't get to modern fantasy without talking about this stuff.
Yeah.
But once you get into more modern fantasy writing, post 1965 fantasy writing, it gets very, I don't want to say laney, but like it's preferential. You're going to have your preferences.
Yeah.
I'll have my preferences. But that doesn't mean that we just want to talk about what Mac and Rob like, because Mac and Rob like different things. Just like you're going to like different things. So we'd really like to talk about what you like as well,
Oh, absolutely.
including hopefully stuff that we've both read or somebody that Mac has co-hosting has read.
Well, I am kind of kicking around the idea of making this into a something of a book club kind of thing, where we'll get, we'll build a structure and be like, all right, in 2 weeks we're going to be discussing. In 2 weeks we're going to be doing a deep dive into Beowulf, the Shane Hassani translation. So pick it up at stores near you. We're not doing that, but we do something like that where it's like, hey, in 2 weeks we're going to be talking about
Nine Princes
Three
of
Hearts and
Amber
Three
by
Lions.
Roger Zelazny. Yeah. No, I mean that sounds like great.
Yeah.
By the way, Nine Princes of Amber. It's a great book. You should read it. But the there's a canon for fantasy that we're gonna try and hit. Whether it's Mac and another co-host or Mac and myself that are gonna hit all of those, it really depends on who wants to talk about what.
Yeah.
But getting you guys involved and understanding what you read and what's involved in your process and your creation process for D&D and your inspiration process for D&D is a big one.
Plus, we want to talk about things you think are cool. We want to talk
Yeah.
about things you find are interesting. We want to be.
Otherwise,
I was going to
it's
say we
me,
want to be schooled in
Mac
the
and I
chat.
talking about literature, which is, come on.
I mean,
Mac.
I'll put on a smoking jacket and break out my bubble pipe and it's like, oh yes, my fine cognac.
Break down Tolkien's writing in 6 different languages.
One of my favorite things I've ever seen in a museum, and I've seen the Sutton Hoo helmet, so this is up there. One of my favorite things. This is when I was still at Texas A&M. They had a rare books library, and one of the things they had there was the original manuscript that Tolkien hand wrote and mailed to I believe it was C.S. Lewis, and it was for Fellowship of the Ring. And C.S. Lewis's notes are in the margins. C.S. Lewis is like, these two are very clearly friends because like, that's stupid. This doesn't make any sense. What are you doing here? But
So
Tolkien's
there's
handwriting
another
is Tengwar. It's the Elvish language. It's like, what am I looking at? This is insane.
Yeah. There's another letter, and this one is from Tolkien to C.S. Lewis with Tolkien's notes on Narnia. Not in the margins. It's a letter response to the manuscript that C.S. Lewis sent, where Tolkien explains that the imagery borders on the blasphemous. It's all very fun. You can tell these guys have been friends for a long, long time, and spend a lot of weekends together because it's both understanding of the writer's character and also mean, super fucking mean. But that sort of ability to criticize each other's work is probably what helped elevate their works.
Oh, absolutely. And I think we'll probably, that feels like a topic for a Tolkien, maybe even a Lewis episode, or a Tolkien and Lewis episode.
C.S. Lewis and Tolkien high-fiving.
Yeah. Yeah, high five. We've created fantasy. Let's do this. Yeah. So we'll definitely be covering Tolkien, but really we have a handful of things planned for book-wise by the time counting Lord of the Rings as a book, and Narnia as a book. We'll cover each of those, and then we're out of ideas. So please let us know what you want us to talk about. You can
Mac
throw it
is
in the
out
Discord.
of ideas. I'm gonna make Mac read 3 Hearts and 3 Lions. So.
Oh no, I 100% want to read that because I'm a big fan of where because Gygax was a fan of Three Hearts and Three Lions actually.
Yeah.
The only reason why we have the Tolkien-esque stuff in Dungeons and Dragons is because his players were Tolkien fans, and he wanted something that would make them interested. He didn't give two craps, which is why hobbits and gnomes and other Tolkien-esque races were kind of a joke because he didn't like them.
And they felt like add-ons because they were.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap it up.
Yeah, I think we were sort of talking in circles here.
Gygax hates Tolkien. Got it.
Boom. Done. So everybody else, thank you so much for joining in on the chat. What's happening? Sorry, I'm trying to copy a link. Boop. There we go. Problem solved. Sorry about that. Nope. Problem not solved. There we go. Okay. I don't understand technology. So check out our Discord channel here, guys. If you want to join in on the chat, you want to give us some book suggestions to talk about or to read even, because I have so much time right now. So let us know in the Discord. Sound off. We have a whole bunch of different stuff going on in there, including, but throw it into the happy hour under shows. Say, hey, check out these books or series, and we'll take a look at it. Otherwise, the rest of the Discord is great. We have a whole bunch of. I'm actually running the game. I'm running is based off of a bunch of people we picked up on the Discord, and there's always games that are being run there. There's a whole bunch of really fun stuff. It's a great community, so check us out. And we're always happy to. There's always somebody awake, so we're happy to talk to you about whatever it is that you have vaguely related to nerd stuff, or just go to general chat and tell us how cute your cat is. I don't know. Sanderson is not an incredibly new author. He's been publishing nearly 15 years. That's...
I just want to put out Brandon Sanderson is the guy who finally finished Wheel of Time. And for that alone, he's going to be considered a great author because Wheel of Time was lost.
True.
Completely lost.
Some one-book wonders. You're going to have to help us out on that one, Yonzam. Anyway, yeah, so that's... now there's bickering going on in the chat, and I love it. But I'm going to bow out respectfully and let everyone else get out and do. So thank you again so much for tuning in, guys. We had a great time, going over the news and talking about the things we really care about. And we want to get you guys engaged. So thanks for being in the chat, and we will see you guys tomorrow, I guess, is the... Yeah, tomorrow. It's Tuesday, right?
It's Belkin Weave. Yeah, tomorrow's Belkin Weave.
Tomorrow's Belkin Weave. And then Thursday is Whiskey, Magic, and Destruction, and then we loop back around for Monday with That Mini's Paint Show.
With the more entertaining people and Mac and myself.
Yeah, we're really here to sort of drag the room down. It's great, and I love it. High five.
Yeah. Does this work? Are we doing it
right?
Way,
other way. Yeah. Oh, wait, no, you missed it. Pull back. One more. Yeah. Clap.
Nice.
All right. So we're clearly chewing the scenery here. So everyone, have a great night. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.